don't seem to be buying any of it because old Joe was again heckled on the campaign trail Sunday in New Hampshire. Take a look at this.
Okay, hey, this is not a Trump rally. Okay. Oh. All right, I agree with you, man. I agree. Nice talking to you. This is a democracy. Well, I hope it does. I hope it does. Let her go.
Quid pro quo Joe, they were shouting, and a few other things you may have noticed. Now, not only is Biden floundering ahead of the Iowa and New Hampshire primaries and caucuses, but he still thinks he's above the law, claiming he would refuse to comply with an impeachment subpoena issued by the U.S. Senate before being forced, grudgingly, to walk back those remarks. Remember, Biden is literally on tape admitting to a quid pro quo with Ukraine, admitting to leveraging U.S. taxpayer dollars to get the prosecutor fired who just happened to be investigating Burisma Holdings and his zero experience on Biden. And tonight it gets even worse for the Biden Business Bureau. That's what we're calling it, because according to a new report from the Daily Caller, the IRS actually placed a lien on over $100,000 in unpaid taxes from Hunter Biden from the same year he served on Burisma's board. That's right, he's raking in a bunch of money, the grifter he is, and he won't even pay his taxes. Well, the evidence is so damning that even Biden's partners in the media mob are beginning to admit this looks like a political disaster. Take a look.
And he needs to have tight, consistent answers that are logical, not defensive, not emotional. This is going to continue coming up. He needs to know how to deal with it because it's not going away.
But frankly, it does stink that Hunter Biden got this contract with no expertise in the energy sector. And he's already said, basically, he probably got that money, which was significant, because of his connection with his father, the vice president at the time, who was also in charge of Ukraine at the time.
Jake said it stinks. Mark the day on your calendar. From constant campaign.
Greg, I think it's problematic for him, but far more so than what Hunter has done. It's what Joe says every day. He's the gift that keeps on giving. He might as well have been wrapped up with a bow on his head, brought down the chimney by Santa on Christmas Day. If you remember the movie Being There, and this guy named Chauncey Gardner, who was just a gardener, and he would say these sort of off-the-wall things, and people kept thinking, oh, that's deep. That's so deep. I think Biden's supporters have been reduced to trying to think of Joe Biden as saying these deep things when actually his gaffes are coming so fast, and Joe isn't even aware of what he's saying. Let me give you a quick example. Last week, he said that these executives of fossil fuel companies ought to be put in jail. And I wondered, is he aware that his son was an executive of Burisma, a fossil fuel company? Come on, this is stuff that you can't make this up.
Well, that's Clueless Joe. You know, we had in baseball Shoeless Joe. Now we've got Clueless Joe on the campaign trail. You know, Dan, Jake the Fake Tapper on CNN. I mean, you know you're in trouble when even a CNN anchor begins to say, gee, this stinks. And some CNN commentators, including a Democratic strategist, start saying, you know, Joe Biden's got to give better answers than these.
Well, Greg, you know, the most damaging political narratives that really hurt candidates, and any political consultant will tell you this, are ones that change dramatically some pre-existing conception you had of who this person was. Now, think about it. What is Joe Biden trying to, it's garbage, but what is he trying to sell America? He's trying to sell America on his lunch bucket Joe imagery, right? That's his thing. I'm the guy, you know, you can sit there who carries the lunchbox to work. I get dirt under my fingernails. I know what it's like for you. Well, really? Because, I mean, let's just be clear on this. How many guys or women out there who carry a lunch lunch bucket to work have a son who's raking in $80K a month for a no-show job with absolutely zero qualifications in a foreign country he's never even been to? The answer is a big fat zero. I don't think there's anybody in the entire country with a lunch bucket that's done that. Combine that with him constantly, as the governor said, he constantly can't get out of his own way. The guy face plants all the time, and this guy's a troubled candidate. I mean, this thing with the subpoenas this weekend is a disaster. They're trying to impeach President Trump for invoking executive privilege on subpoenas, while Biden, who has no executive privilege right now, says, yeah, I'm going to ignore the subpoenas too. Have a nice day. I mean,
Biden is determined to embarrass himself, no matter what. During an interview with the Des Moines Register, Biden said he would ignore any subpoena from the Senate to testify about Ukraine.
Do you stand by your earlier statements that you wouldn't comply if you were subpoenaed to testify in an impeachment trial before the Senate?
Correct. And the reason I wouldn't is because it's all designed to deal with Trump doing what he's done his whole life, trying to take the focus off him.
Except that half the justification for impeaching President Trump was that he wasn't complying with House subpoenas. So Biden tried to walk back his flub just days later.
I would obey any subpoena that was sent to me. But the point I was making as it relates to me is the only rational reason, and you know this of your papers you've written, that I could possibly be called an impeachment trial was, can I shed any light on whether or not he committed the crime he's accused of? And there is no reason to believe I would have any notion about whether he committed that crime. Every single solitary person who's investigated what's happened in Ukraine, including all the people who are under oath in his administration, said Biden's as clean as a whistle.
Let's be clear here. The president has a presidential privilege. That's the basis on which he can refuse a subpoena. What's the basis on which Joe Biden refuses a subpoena?
He's scared.